Oh, wait, I wasn't ready. 1, 2, 3.
What's happening in your city?
1, 2, 3.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to City Views in our weekly segment, What's Cookin', with 65th State District Rep Michelle Cook. We want to thank the sponsor of City Views, Toth Insurance Agency, located at 1151 East Main Street in the fine city of Torrington. For all your insurance needs, we encourage you to check them out and tell them that Jacque sent you. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, I am so very excited today for this interview with Michelle Cook because there's so much going on. And I think that in these particular times, it's good to hear from the people who are representing us to let us know exactly what their feelings are, what they've been hearing from you, and what plans for the future are viable and on the horizons to meet the great challenges that we have today. Michelle, how are you?
I'm all right today. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. We are right now under a national weather emergency, by the way, and we just got through going through some very tumultuous weather just a few weeks ago. So I know that even though we're having this interview right now, that you probably have your tentacles up and waiting to hear whatever situations or conditions are existing out there.
Absolutely. And I know that we don't necessarily air immediately, but obviously for those folks that are in our region or in our state, they know that we've had tornado warnings and tornado watches and, you know, all sorts of things that we've had today. And I find it kind of ironic that of all the days that we are seeing some more, you know, torrential downpours and, you know, gusty winds, that they're also in the middle of the public hearings for Eversource. I find it kind of ironic. And, you know, I know that we had decided that we were going to have conversations about Eversource today. And as we were discussing prior to our hitting go, that we really want to be able to give a thorough rundown on what is going on with the Eversource situations. So I'm asking that we give it one more week so we can find out what the outcomes are of today's hearings. We really give a good look at Take Back Our Grid proposals that are out there, and then give that all a good rundown next week if that works for you, especially given the fact that we still have some looming weather above us, and you never know if we're going to keep our power or not. So
yeah, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed, definitely, that we get through this. I know we call Dan the Magic Man, but I don't even know if his powers can even preclude something like that from happening.
Oh, I'll tell you. And, you know, I think that we were blessed to miss a good amount of this storm because I know that further down into the valley towards like the West Haven, Branford way, they were seeing winds up to 90, 95 miles an hour. And we know what happened a couple of weeks ago. And I just don't think that any of us have the ability to go through that or sustain through that again, especially not to be without power for a week or two, which we know is not acceptable. And it's something that we are obviously fighting to ensure doesn't happen again. But Mother Nature does need to cooperate before we get to those points.
Well, I wouldn't be making no demands on Mother Nature's right now because I think she's ready to roar.
Well, and we see obviously what's happening down in the south with the hurricane that's hit. And obviously, I believe we're going to see some of those remnants over the weekend as well. So, yeah, Mother Nature definitely lets us know who's in charge.
And, you know, it's very ironic that, you know, the weather patterns are playing the significant roles that they are right now in a lot of the things that are happening throughout the country. And I think that right now, at this particular time, especially with the legislation that just came down from the state of Connecticut in terms of police accountability, it seems that Connecticut is kind of like on the forefront of these national issues in terms of, you know, defining what side of history the state is going to be on in terms of how these issues roll out in the future.
I agree with you. And, obviously that piece of legislation came with some angst and stress. And we know that there's going to be some things that are going to be addressed in the upcoming legislative session in January. And I don't know if it's something, we're supposed to go into special session in a couple of weeks. I don't know if that's something that we're going to be looking at. I do know that we'll be looking at Take Back the Grid legislation. Jacque, we're in some trying times. We're in the middle of obviously a huge shift. I think that doesn't only mean with our climate, but I think that means with our culture. I think that means political. And, within the next few months, there's going to be a lot of things happening, not only here in the state, and as you say, leading the charge in certain things, but nationwide. And there's going to be a lot of angst and anxiety and stress and aggravation and opinions. So I really hope that as we see things change, we still see tragedy and devastation happen. We still see lives lost. We still see protests happening. I would hope that as we continue to move forward in these next few months, that we really take a pause before we let all of our anger and frustration get the better of us and realize that together we're going to make this better. And that's the only way that we're going to get through it. And that's the only way that we're going to make good, effective changes.
Let's be honest, Michelle, you have an election coming up.
I do.
And you have to take all this into context. And what do you think you need to do in terms of making sure that you're in a position to take on these huge challenges going forward?
Traditionally, it would be, out there knocking on every door and talking to everybody and getting their views and their opinions and try to be able to mold and form what's going to happen in January. And, with the pandemic and people are afraid sometimes to open their doors and they don't know what's coming down and they want to see, we want to see healthy communities, that comes with some challenges this election cycle. For me, it's doing the same that I've done. It's listening to people and it is hearing what they have to say. It should not matter about their age, their race, their gender, or their political views. We have to listen to each other and we have to really formulate together where we need to go and how we need to get there. That's what I've been doing over my tenure in office. And that's what I, promise to continue to do. And as we see these challenging times, if you're not comfortable answering your door and talking to a candidate, please reach out, in other means, whether it be email or Facebook or other social media avenues, Instagrams and the like, because it is about listening to every voice, but we need to listen to every voice in a safe manner, and however safe is defined by each individual person.
I know you've over the last few months during the pandemic, you've been very active in being on the front lines in terms of feeding the community. And today you were at Oliver Wolcott High School passing out masks for students and parents. Talk about how important you feel that those activities are in making sure that the community is coming together during a crisis.
So I found my time during the pandemic, the opportunity to be CERT certified, Community Emergency Response Team certification through our fire chief here. And then I was able to volunteer during a pandemic. And that's just been truly heartwarming for me. And so what I did was I started utilizing that when we were doing all of the food drives. So I partnered with the Friendly Hands Food Bank, and I've now been put on their board. This was what happens when you volunteer, you get put back to more work. But it's been a great opportunity getting to, reach out to folks that you would not necessarily be able to reach out to every week. Because, with life always getting in the way, I would have been stuck, in Hartford and doing legislation during our regular legislative session, and not really being able to be knocking on doors or handing out food or doing well checks to people. And then, doing the mask drives, a couple of months ago. And then today we did the mask for Connecticut drop off and pickups for not only for students, but for bus drivers and for teachers. And I believe that they said we had given out at the middle school today well over 6,000 masks, which for me is what it's really all about. It's about being able to volunteer your time to make an effective change in the community. And that doesn't always have to be a policy change. That could be handing out the food, or today handing out masks. And for families that might not be able to have the means to buy a couple of extra masks, or bus drivers or teachers, they don't have to feel the burden of purchasing those items for their classrooms or their bus riders. That's what it's about. It's about the smiles. It's about people saying thank you. And it's about knowing that just by those volunteer hours today, the 4 hours that we were up there, and then we did drop off masks to Oliver Wolcott Technical High School, and then I've dropped off to the preschools in the area. It's about that. It's about knowing that we're able to make people feel safer and more comfortable going through the next several months of uncertainty.
And speaking of that uncertainty, Michelle, there is some anxiety about kids returning to school. And it's a very legitimate concern right now. And you really can't blame parents for how they feel on either side of the issue. Now, people sometimes get confused as to what role you have as a state representative and just where your influence ends and where it begins. But in terms of managing the pandemic in regards to how protocols are implemented in the Torrington School District, how can you enhance people's confidence that their children can return to school safely?
Well, so today, while we were handing out masks, I know that our teachers were in trainings, so they were being educated on how to educate in the middle of this uncertain time. So all of the schools were there. The middle school parking lot was full. Torrington School parking lot was full. The high school. So I know that our Board of Education has really been trying to do their due diligence to ensure that not only are our students safe and comfortable, but also our educators. It's important. There's two components to this. We've talked about it before. We have to make sure that both groups of people are comfortable. And, as far as my involvement in that, it's really about communication. If the superintendents call and they need information, then I absolutely, would get that information for them. I've been in regular contact with our Board of Education members, the ones that that have reached out. We talk regularly. Some I talk to every day, asking for clarification or information, and then being able to just share that information with them so they can make their decisions accordingly. I don't sit on those boards. I don't have a say in what they do. I only have an advisory role in the manner of which they want me to have that role. So, if the superintendent's called and they needed something, I would obviously do everything in my power to do that. When the Board of Education members call, I do everything in my power to give them what they need as well. But at the same time, I did that for bus drivers, educators, and parents. In the same manner, I've done Zoom calls with our educators. I've done Zoom calls with our bus drivers, and I've talked to hundreds of parents trying to figure out what they feel is comfortable. And for me, I learned some of the same information just like you do, regardless of whether I'm an elected official or not. I don't have any more kids in the public school system, so I don't get the surveys like my neighbor does, or my neighbor across the street. They still have kids in school. So I'm not in all of those email chains because I don't have necessarily a voting say on whether I'm putting my kid back to school or not. I know that if my children were here, I would put them back in school. I think that I'm comfortable in the safety and security of the directions that we're going, but at the same time, I know that there's also a social emotional component to this that is vitally important that kids need and thrive on. And not only do you grow educationally, but you do grow socially and mentally. And by keeping people at home and in front of a computer screen, I know that we're doing that, and we're doing that for safety measures. And I respect all of that. But at the same time, I know that there's some of that we're losing that you can't get the way that you and I are communicating right now. So, the Board of Education has decided to do a hybrid model, 2 days on, closed a day, and then 2 days on for the other group of students. And they're starting on September 8th, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day. And I hope and pray every day that our students have the opportunity to stay in school. And, they're looking at a 30-day rotation and make a decision after 30 days to see what happens. And I'm hoping that after that 30 days that our students will be able to be going to school full time. I know that I looked at kids' faces today and they're like, they miss my friends, they miss their teachers. We are in uncertain times, and I think that it's something that's very difficult for our young people to understand. And on top of that, you've got kids that want to go to college and they want to play sports. And the CIAC just did a ruling that sports could start. And I'm really hoping that we see good bills of health and the cohorting works, and that our athletes that really thrive on that as well are able to continue to compete in their seasons too.
Michelle, that is a rosy picture scenario, but I'm sure that you're familiar with reports that have been put out there that we might get hit with not only a second wave of coronavirus, but that might be mingled with the flu as well.
That's true.
If those situations occur, how would that affect your planning and perspective on providing safe environments for children in this year?
Well, I think it goes back to what we've learned since we've been closed in March. And then moving forward, we have to be respectful of how families feel, and then how your educators feel. And in first and foremost, making sure that those children are safe and in a safe environment. And look, as much as we want our kids to be in school full time, we want our kids to be able to play sports and do all of their extracurricular activities, because that's truly what makes up the school environment, is all of those things wrapped together. If we see outbreaks and we cannot cohort and we don't have the ability to send a group home and do all of those things, then we're going to have to do what we're going to have to do, because it is healthy communities and saving lives that is the most important conversation to all of this. I'm, like I said, when we started, I pray that we don't see all of those things, but I understand that they lurk right here on the horizon, and that we can't let our guard down. And I think that that's where this really needs to be an honest conversation, Jacque, right? That this is about all of us. This is about doing what we need to do to keep everybody safe. So that is keeping your social distance, wearing your face masks. If you don't need to go out, don't push the envelope and don't go out. If you're above a certain age, stay home. If you have compromised systems, stay home. If you need something, let other people help you. I know that there's a whole lot of us, and I'm one of them, that I don't ask for help a lot. But I think when we're looking and we're talking about pandemics and keeping people alive and safe, this is no better time but now to start asking people for help. But it also goes back to patience and understanding. And we have to take a step back and say, from the government can't make me do this, or you can't force me to do this, to realize that it's not really about me or you, but it's about all of us. And I think that if we do nothing more, that we continue to do that. If we let our guard down, then we absolutely are going to see tragedy strike again, because we don't have a vaccination for this yet. Everybody has not been infected. And as you said, the flu season could easily be very, very bad. I know that there's a group of people out there that don't want to be vaccinated. I'm a firm believer that, if you can get a flu vaccination, you should get a flu vaccination. It might not keep you from getting the flu, but it might keep you from getting a terrible flu. Nobody wants that terrible flu.
Absolutely not.
And we need to keep people out of the hospital. And that's really part of the fight for COVID, is keeping the burdens off of our hospitals and our emergency rooms, and recognizing that that's where the burden came, and we weren't prepared for that. And I think that everybody has learned a lot. I know that there's people that have loved ones in the nursing homes and they're still not getting their visitations. And if that's happening, please call me. I know that that is difficult. I know that is heart-wrenching, and there are things that we can do about that. And it's all of us together in this. It's not an individual fight. It is a community fight. It's not a community fight. It's a state fight. And then it is a national fight. And we can't let our guard down. And I understand that there are the naysayers out there. You and I have talked to many of them that this is, this is just fictitious. This is not a real thing. It'll go away. It's no worse than the flu. The numbers don't read the way that they are. If you're a naysayer, I would hope that you just have patience, because people are dying. People are getting very sick. I want life to go back to whatever normal looks like, just like you do, and everybody that's going to watch. This is a hard time. But I think one of the most important things that we can do is to continue to stop the spread of this virus and be diligent. Wash our hands, social distance, wear your face coverings. If you don't want to wear your face coverings, okay, but you're putting people at risk. It might not be about you, but it is about other people. And I know that there's that other argument that if I'm not wearing a face mask, but you are, then you're covered and you're protected. There's still conversation about how you can spread this virus, and they're still learning this.
I think what kind of convinced me, Michelle, as you just stated moments earlier, when you think about the fact that you could be putting a lot of undue pressure on our frontline workers.
Yes.
Because I don't think people understand the fact that this virus has very unique properties. And because of those unique properties, when you have an admittance into an emergency room, there are specific protocols that have to be taken place, which puts extraordinary pressure on your frontline workers. So an outbreak, it may not affect you if you live on one side of town, but it could totally break down the processes on another side of town.
Well, we're dealing with that right now in Danbury, right? So Danbury had an outbreak last week. They know the exact community that the outbreak started in. They know where it's at. And it is truly cohorted in one community area, in one little nucleus. And you're talking about 40 or 50 cases in a week out of that one little area. And they have a handle on it, and they're doing their due diligence, and they're ensuring that they can slow and stop the spread. But it's truly about a community trying to do that. And the other thing that we still know is a huge issue are the asymptomatic carriers that have absolutely no symptoms but are carrying a virus. And if you are out because you have to be out, you need to go to the grocery store, you need to get medication, and for whatever the reason, you by medical condition cannot wear a facial covering, whether you have COPD or asthmatic or whatever those issues that prevent you from being able to wear a mask, but you must go out. And I am an asymptomatic carrier and I choose not to wear my mask, I could easily infect you. And that's why I say that a facial covering is more about you than it is about me in that scenario. And we have to, in some respects, and in this time, I would hope that we would take some of those opinions aside and really work together. Because if our nursing homes see another crisis like they did in March, April, May, and June, that's devastation. If our nursing home staff are going through the same things and we don't have enough staff, if our teachers get sick and we don't have enough educators, if our doctors and our nurses and our hospitals and offices get sick and we don't have enough of them, we're going to be in trouble. And we have got to recognize that it has to be a healthy community or we don't have a community.
Well, Michelle, I just appreciate your sentiments and your awareness of how urgent these issues are. I think sometimes we can distance ourselves from things that don't affect us directly. But as is the case in most crises, when they hit you, there's no warning.
That's true. And, we left session in March And I remember the speaker standing up on the dais, and we were done. And he says, everybody, please be safe. And this will affect some of us directly. And it did. We had members that had COVID. We had family members and loved ones that passed away. We've had people that were in the hospital. And I think my point is, back in March, you sit back and you think, it's not going to affect me. And you recognize much sooner than you realize that it really does affect you. And by the grace of God, maybe you haven't been directly affected, but there are several hundred thousands of people out there that have. And you asked me a question a few minutes ago on what I could do to ensure that we're more prepared. Part of my day today, during handing out masks and doing a conference call with a couple of hospitals, was also another call with my chairman of my Human Services Committee, because I've been leading the charge in fighting for changes at the nursing home level since my father-in-law's passing, working with the governor's office and asking for the investigation and doing some overall changes in nursing homes. And we're doing legislation, and we're working on that for our September session on things that we know will make a direct impact if, in fact, we see COVID come back in the worst form of what has been anticipated. We know some of the important things that must happen. We have learned from the devastation. We've learned that I knew it before COVID, and it just, emphasized the fact that we need more staff there. More staffing in our nursing homes. We need to figure out a way to ensure that they have all of the necessary needs. Even if their owners don't put them there, we need to make sure that they are there. We need to figure out a way to ensure that possibly put cameras in the rooms of the residents, so loved ones can just lay an eye on their loved one, even though they might not be able to physically touch them. We gave out 800 iPads during the pandemic, so residents in nursing homes could talk to their loved ones face to face. All of these different things, creating new positions so you can have somebody sit with a resident and just have a conversation so the staff can do their job and they don't have to take their time away. So these are all the things that we really need to move forward with, and recognize that a lot of the implementations that we've done during the pandemic are really good pieces of things that need to stay. Shortening the timelines for applications and doing more things online and lessening some of the, restrictions on things. All of these things are things that we've learned that we need to continue to do to ensure that we run more smoothly. And then if we do need to shrink some of that back again, we're better prepared.
Well, Michelle, we are recording this specific segment so that we can return to our original time slot on Tuesday nights with an updated show. So I appreciate your comments today, because I do think that they're very relevant and timely. It seems to me that right now, more than anything else, we need to make sure that we can have credible and trustworthy information going out into the mainstream right now. And I just really want to thank you for always being a straight shooter. It's very important right now because in the time of crisis, the number one component that's extremely important to make sure that everything is running effectively is to have that trust factor with your government. And this is one of those times where we have the opportunity to solidify that trust and ensure that the people are getting the information that they need in an effective and timely manner. So thank you for that. And we're looking forward to talking with you next week so you can update us on the hearings that are taking place right now. And as we head on into the rest of the election season, We want to make sure that we're doing it with a modicum of integrity and trust. So, as always, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Be safe and be patient.
As always, my friend.
Absolutely.
And ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to check us out on our YouTube channel at cityviews-ct or on our website at cityviews-ct.com. We got more good stuff coming at you right here from City Views. On behalf of the production team, we want to say thank you for your support and stay tuned for more good stuff coming at you.